Hi, I'm making this video after trying to help a student with a surprising problem. I don't know if anyone else has run into it, in which case the video might be really helpful. But even if you didn't, it might be something good to know. So the particular problem that I had to troubleshoot, that we had to work on, was exporting a model from ModelBuilder to Python in ArcGIS Pro. So if you remember, this is the last step that you're asked to do in the exercise 7 that features ModelBuilder. So the problem was that in ModelBuilder, the student was unable to find an export button up here. And I couldn't find it either. It wasn't there. This was surprising to me. And I double checked what I had done, went online. It's always a good idea to just Google the problem and look at any Esri documentation pages. So here under Help, Analysis Geoprocessing, ModelBuilder Advanced Techniques, there is the page for exporting a model to Python. And you can read the first few sentences. To export a model to Python, click the Export button on the ModelBuilder ribbon. So when I saw that, even without having a Pro open, I knew this is where to look, but there was not a button. And so I looked a bit deeper online, beyond the Esri documentation, to some older kind of Stack Overflow discussion board. This functionality, this exporting a model to Python from ModelBuilder, was something that was included in the very first versions of ArcGIS Pro, like 1.1, 1.2. But actually Esri removed it. It removed it because, as you might see when you export the model from ModelBuilder, some things work a little bit differently in ModelBuilder compared to what we learned as kind of best practices in general Python. And the clear way to see that, I think, is with the iterators. So they have for and while iterators, but then they have all of these others, what is it, like 10, 11, 12 iterators through objects that are built into Arc, that are familiar to Arc, Py methods. So iterate feature selection, row selection, fields, data sets, feature classes, rasters, and so on. And this can make things streamlined in ModelBuilder, because when you're iterating rasters versus feature classes, maybe different components of that are going to be more or less useful. So for instance, rasters having bands, each one showing a different value per grid cell, compared to feature classes that have a much more or potentially much more complex geometry and attached attribute table. So these can be helpful in streamlining a ModelBuilder construction, a task to build out a model in ModelBuilder. But when you export it to Python, the structures of for and while loops are very helpful and simple and easy to read. So Esri's thinking was that the scripts that were being exported weren't the best scripts, weren't ideal, weren't intuitive to read. And as we'll see, there are a whole host of methods in ArcPy that feature some of these objects. I shouldn't say feature, because one of those objects is the feature classes that key in on, that are built around these types of objects that involve producing a list of all the objects of that type in a workspace. And with that list, you're able to kind of use these familiar iterators. So Esri took it out, and it is not present. You will not find this export button in version 2.1.3, which is in the Teaching Wing lab. So the physical computers on AUM campus, at least most of them, at least the ones that are kind of in the student rows there, won't have the export. I believe the instructor computer in that room does. The VLab ones do. But if you don't see it, it's not like a licensing permission issue. It's just a versioning issue. While I was kind of figuring that out, I also brought up the other way that you can get Python syntax, Python statements from the ArcGIS Pro GUI, graphical user interface. And that's by looking in the history of the geoprocessing. So you find history on the Analysis tab over to the far left. So I have a project open, looking at mines and downstream flow in Honduras. And so some of the tools I've run are buffers, clips, and so on. So just looking at the tools that I have run, if I right-click them, I have a few options. I can copy the Python command, send to Python window, or save a Python script. So I think the easiest way to see what it is to send to Python window. So we open up the Python window that you could access here on the Analysis tab at left. And at bottom is a statement. So it's arcpy.analysis.buffer, open parentheses, and then a whole sequence of arguments for the parameters. So the first is mining activity and some date. That's the input. Features to be buffered. Here's the location to be output. I just called test, so you can see the confidence I had that that would be a final product. A buffer distance, 1 kilometers, and then full, round, all, none, planar. And as I click on those in the line, a bit of documentation pops up. So it's full is the side type, and you can see the other options, full, left, right. Round is the end type. So do you want the buffer to extend past, say, the edge of a linear feature? All is the dissolve type. None is a dissolve field, which would be something if we were going to dissolve it, or it could be something. But because it's just all, we're not going to dissolve on different fields. And then planar, this is the method, planar geodesic, to create the buffer. So that gets you a little bit of Python syntax for a tool that maybe you're more familiar running just by kind of clicking and typing in parameter values in the GUI. Hope that was helpful.